Okay, so these are standard moves: e4, e5, controlling the center. So we've talked about this stuff before, so we'll just go to the next move. Knight c6, again normal. And so here, the normal course of development, so the basic opening principle is you develop knights before bishops. And so you have already, so now I'm talking for white. So white has already developed his knight. And so the most natural move here would be to develop the bishop and get the king to safety. So something like bishop c4, bishop b5, and then castles. Yeah.
Okay, question. So when you say knights before bishop, the way I have understood up until this point is you develop both the knights before you start moving the bishop, or are you referring to the fact that you develop the knight on the king's side before you develop the bishop on the king's side?
So usually what you see is you develop the knight on the king's side and then you develop the bishop so that you can get your king to safety as soon as possible.
Okay.
But of course, this depends on the opening. This depends on the position.
Right.
But the
right.
general,
Okay.
Yeah. So the general principle is to develop as fast as possible and get your king to safety as fast as possible.
Okay.
Yeah. So to do that, it helps to develop your kingside bishop first here in this position.
Right.
And then just castle, and then you can develop the other knight, then move the pawn. And so usually you don't want to, for example, you don't want to do this before you develop this bishop. So that's another reason why you bring this bishop out first, and only then do you move this pawn so that this bishop can develop.
It's not blocking.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fine. Okay, yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so he plays d4. So d4 is, it's an aggressive move. And so you respond with d6, and you rightly say that this was a bit, maybe passive, and this enabled your opponent to get some space with the d5 push, right?
Right, yeah, that was completely unexpected in d5, so the d5 push. Okay. And the hard part for me was to decide between d6 or should I go for d5 and then like do the pawns exchange. And I don't think I was able to calculate all those exchanges, and I sort of ran out of steam and then just left it,
Right.
Yeah, so that the whole point, I was quite confused as to how to respond to d6, because even if I do e takes d6 and then knight take d6, and then I'm still I wasn't too sure how would it proceed afterwards, because the white's knight is in the middle of the board attacking my knight. So all that was sort of I didn't want to get into that, and I played quite passive at this point.
Okay, so we can talk about that, but before that, can I ask you, what other drawback can you see with d6?
So one thing is blocking the bishop.
Exactly.
So that's what I realized that, I think, while annotating. Yeah, okay. I did. Yeah.
So okay, so let's talk about d5 first. So I've seen you do this before in some of your games where you see tension and then you do the same thing in response.
Yeah.
So in the earlier position, so white has introduced tension into the position, and he sort of has some leeway in deciding whether to break the tension or not. And so usually black, because he has the second move, doesn't have that kind of luxury usually.
Right. Okay.
So the more normal thing to do is what the variation that you provide here, which is just to take on d4, and then you white takes with the knight, and you simply develop your bishop, and that's totally fine.
Okay. So I think what I was concerned, I think this is all later. I never thought about this. This was during annotation. So the fact that the white's knight is in the center of the board, is that going to be of great? I'm trying to say, is that a bad situation for black right now? My question is, should I be trying to avoid that or not?
Okay, so a centralized knight controls more squares. So I think that is your intuition for why you
Yes.
don't like the white knight there. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
However, this knight is easily challenged. So right now, look in the current position, for example, right? Once you develop your bishop, how many pieces attack that white knight right now?
Right. Two.
Two.
Yeah.
And so he only has a queen supporting it right now. So he can
Right.
maybe play bishop e3 there. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
But then if you don't like the knight, you can eventually just eliminate it too.
Okay. I see.
You can always initiate a piece exchange later. But what
Right.
would be recommended is that you finish your development first, unless there are tactical threats that you need to be aware of. But otherwise, you develop, get your king to safety, and then you can think about exchanges and getting the remaining bishop out.
Right. So one thing now that you say, if they do BE3, and I don't think I am in a position to initiate the exchange there, right? Because I would end up losing a piece. Is that correct? Because I can't take knight takes knight and then say bishop takes the knight, and then if I take bishop takes bishop, then the queen can take the bishop and I would lose a piece, right?
Okay, so how many pieces have you lost in that exchange?
One. Is that right, or am I wrong? Okay.
So how many pieces do you have out?
I have two.
Two. And so
Yeah.
you knight takes knight,
Yeah.
and he takes your
then-
knight. So that's one piece down.
So I'm saying after BE3, okay?
Yeah, so after bishop e3, you
Yeah.
take knight takes d4.
Yes. And
So
then
you have a
bishop
piece,
takes-
you have his piece, right?
Yeah.
And then he takes back your piece. You're even.
Yeah.
And then you take his bishop,
Yeah.
and he takes back your bishop. You're even again.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I forgot the second exchange.
All right.
Okay.
So
Okay.
this again is another pattern that I've observed.
Yeah.
So
I struggle with it. Yes. Yeah.
so I have actually made a couple of puzzles for you to look at. It'll be very simple puzzles, and the question there will be, can you tell me if it is safe to capture a piece or not? Okay.
Okay. Okay.
And so how do you determine if it's safe to capture a piece? Let's actually just put this position on the board.
Yeah.
Okay. So the question is, how many pieces attack the knight on d4? How many black pieces attack the knight on d4?
Two.
How many white pieces defend the piece on d4?
Two.
So
Okay.
as long as this is balanced, you neither win or lose a piece. Now,
So
if you have
from either side, right? It doesn't matter who initiates the exchange.
yeah, as long
it's
as it's
all-
even, then you just exchange pieces and end up being even, right? However, if let's imagine you had a queen here, for example.
Sorry, your voice dropped out. Could you
Oh.
repeat that? Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, it says your internet connection is unstable, so that might
Yeah.
have to do with it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's keep trying. If it's really bad, I might switch out. But yeah. Okay.
Just a second. I had settings to get the chat box here, but I'm not seeing the chat box. But I do see the messages on Twitch directly. So hi, Frappuccino. Nice to have you here. Okay, so let's go back to that position.
Okay.
Okay, so I was asking you what would happen if you had a white queen on a4, or a black queen on a4.
So that would be 3 against 2.
Yes, so you have
Okay.
3 pieces attacking the knight on d4, and you
Yeah.
have 2 pieces defending.
Yeah.
Now, in that case, white needs to bring in 1 more piece to defend the knight.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, in that specific case, there may be other tactics with them being able to attack your queen, but this is just to illustrate the point that
Okay, gotcha.
it depends
Okay.
on how many pieces attack something and how many pieces defend something.
Okay.
So-
All right.
okay.
So if we go back to that D5 thing that you said, so you're saying that not D5, sorry, EX D4, and then knight takes D4, and then bishop to c5. That's usually the
Yeah,
way.
that looks normal. So you have two pieces out.
Interesting.
He has a central pawn and his knight on a central square. I would say it's even. You just continue
Okay.
developing. It's a normal game.
Okay, I see.
And the other thing that I've observed in your games is that you tend to initiate these confrontations in the center before you're developed. So
Okay.
that is one reason why you gave this variation here, d5. So
Yes, yeah. So yeah,
so
exactly.
you
Yeah.
tend to do this sort of thing. Instead, I would recommend that you play simple chess like this. Okay, so just eliminate that aggressive looking central pawn and then just go about your development.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I think the what was really the fact that the white could take my pawn using the knight and advance the knight for more to the center was sort of scary to me, and I wasn't. I didn't want to allow that prospect, I guess, but didn't
Okay.
do me any good, anyways.
Cool. Okay, I can see chat now. Hey Shivam, good to have you here. Okay. So
Okay.
d5 in the game. And okay, so this is an important point here. So as you probably know this
Okay.
already. So this is a blunder.
I don't know why it's a blunder. Oh well, okay. Oh yes, because of that. Correct. Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I know it. Yes, I know it because we spoke about it
Yeah.
earlier. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So anytime you make a move like this, you need to at least think about what your opponent's next move is going to be, and you need to check the basic, forcing moves. By that I mean, checks and captures and threatening moves. And the most obvious threatening move here in this position is b4, just attacking
Right.
your knight.
Right. Yeah. Then no,
And
there's
so
no more
then the
score.
question is, do you have squares for your piece?
I don't. Right.
Okay.
I'll lose that. Yeah.
Yeah. So anytime you make a move with your piece like this, especially in the opening, you have to watch out to make sure that you're not trapping your own piece. Okay.
Right.
So
Yeah.
every time you make a move, you should ask whether it's a safe move to make. And to
Okay.
determine whether it's a safe move, you try to look at what your opponent's next move is going to be, and you look
Yeah.
at the major threats and captures and checks in the position.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think I can kind of remember what I was thinking at this point is that first of all, I violated one of the principles that you always tell me, which is don't touch your piece twice during the development. Try to move the other pieces, right? So I was kind of unhappy that I was forced to do it. The next thing I was thinking was, okay, so I have to now touch the knight, but I don't want to go back, but I want to go forward. Was the thinking, but
Mm-hmm.
and I stopped the thinking at that point, right? So
Oh,
I found a square where I could move forward, and I ended up moving forward. So
yeah.
so that's what happened there.
Okay. So let's talk about this notion of tempi here. Okay. Let's
Okay.
talk about time in chess. So you said you were uncomfortable with the prospect of the knight going backwards. For
Yeah.
example, if you were to play the move knight b8,
Yeah.
you would be very sad about it.
Right. Yeah, because I'm back to square one.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, white has spent two moves on d4 and d5. Okay, wait a second.
D4.
So these are two pawn moves that white made in the opening, right? d4 and d5.
Right. Right.
And so by playing d5, he too has lost tempo.
Okay.
Okay. And so by going knight b8, you can actually reroute the knight to a good square, which is c5. So let me explain that. So anytime a pawn is moved forwards, I think I've mentioned this to you once before, but anytime a pawn move is made, you introduce a weakness. So
All right.
right. So
Yeah.
let's see. So when the pawn was here, okay, it had some control over this square.
Correct.
Okay. And when you move the pawn forwards, you lose control over this square. And as black, you have a pawn supporting that square. And these squares are something that you should pay attention to in chess. Okay.
The weak squares as a result of pawn pushes.
Yes. So anytime your opponent makes a move like this and weakens a square, you should be thinking, can I take advantage of that weakened square? Can I put a piece on it, for example? Okay, so to take advantage of such a weak square, you can usually put a piece on it, and put a piece on it in such a way that it cannot be challenged. So what is the simplest way in which a piece can be challenged?
By attacking
the piece. Using what is the most effective?
Using
is it another piece or a pawn or
a pawn?
A pawn. Why is that? Because the pawn is of lower value. So the usual way in which you take advantage of such a weak square is you also try to control this square so that this pawn cannot come and challenge a piece that you will eventually put here.
Because in the case of c5, the pawn that has a potential attack value will be on b4, because
if it comes to b4, you again just lose a tempo by putting a piece on c4, because you'll have to move the piece again, right? So what I'm trying to get at here is that once your opponent makes a weak square, and when you start planning on putting a piece there, you should also try to control this square so that your piece cannot be challenged once the piece comes to this square c5.
So would you first take care of the pawn not going to b4 first?
Yeah. So let's say you go knight b8. I'm just going to play some illustrative line here. Okay. So let's say white goes knight c3.
Yeah. So like a5 or something.
Exactly. So that's the intuition, right? a5.
Okay.
You don't have to do this immediately. I mean, it depends on the position, but this is for illustrative purposes. You prepare this knight maneuver with a move like a5 so that you prevent this b4 push.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. And so in doing this, you actually have a great square for your knight, and so this d5 here really I'm not entirely sure it has helped white. So all that stuff that you said earlier about being uncomfortable with this pawn push because it gains space for white, there are actually more factors at play. Because every pawn push, like I said, it creates a weakness, and if you can take advantage of that weakness and put reroute your knight to a better square, that's perfectly a good way to play as black.
I see. Okay, so it seems like depending on the pawn, so every time you push a pawn, the weakened squares around it also moves with it, right? That's what's gonna happen.
Yeah, it's constantly changing. So so anytime the pawn structure changes in a game, you have to pause and think about what features have changed and how you can make a new micro plan for that new pawn structure.
I see. Okay.
And so so here the pawn structure has changed, and one of your micro plans may be to reroute your knight to c5.
Okay. It's possible that the white guards against c5 by doing b4 immediately.
Yeah, so b4 actually sort of weakens the white position, but yeah, he can always expand on the queen side, in which case you will change your plan. So that is
but it's also like now he's forced to do all these pawn pushes, which is also
it takes time. So let's actually talk about that. So d5, you go knight b8. Let's say he just pushes b4, right?
Right.
One way to play this position is just to develop your pieces. Maybe even fianchetto the bishop, castle. You can bring your knight here, and then one typical thing that you can do in those sorts of positions is so usually black has to free up his position when in a situation like this where with white having more space. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
And to free up your position, you use the technique of pawn breaks. Okay, so pawn breaks are moves like this in the position. So if you play f5
I wouldn't. What do you want? So wait. So you mentioned. So you would potentially play nf6 and then push the g pawn, then fianchetto the bishop. And would you castle?
You castle. You do all of that, right? So you
that's
have
kind of interesting, because now you are sort of pushing the pawns in front of the king, sort of taking away the guard barrier, right?
So with a fianchettoed bishop, the bishop actually offers additional protection to the king, but you're right. So moving the f pawn always weakens the king position a little bit.
Right.
But there are dynamic compensations you get in return. because often when you do such a thing, so this is typical in the King's Indian, for example. It's an opening that we may talk about, much later. But here the general plan is, let's say he prevents your queen sides, c5 plans. There are always some other plans you can come up with. Yeah, so your plans keep changing depending on what white does. And so in this case, this is a potential plan. So just fianchet to the bishop, go knight f6, castle, and then move the knight away and look for an f5 break. So that's one way to play it.
I see. Okay. All right. Okay.
So
one last question regarding question about the knight move instead of na5. We were talking about how you would go back to nb8.
Yeah.
What about ne7?
That is also totally fine.
Okay.
So knight e7, for example, there you might actually seriously consider this f5 push eventually.
Okay, because the rerouting is now going to sort of be on the king's side.
Just because this knight already sort of supports the f5 push, right, by being on e7. But again, you'll have to see what white does and come up with a plan.
Right. Okay. All right.
Now, talking about f5 is sort of premature here, so you just have to develop your pieces first in castle before you make such plans.
Okay. I see. Sounds good. Yeah.
All right. So knight a5, and usually what will happen at this level is that they refuse to take your piece, so you never get punished for this.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. All right. So your opponent goes c3. Okay. So with these arrows, I just wanted to point out that he could have developed naturally, even if he missed that he could take your piece. c3 by itself is a poor move. Because the white knight actually wants to go to c3.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to introduce one more concept here. Let me take out. Okay, so with these arrows here, right? These arrows.
Yeah.
Do you see my mouse?
No, I don't see your mouse. So you have to click on squares.
Okay.
I think. Yeah.
So I'm talking about this arrow.
I don't see your mouse. Okay. I see it now. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah.
This one and also this one.
Right.
So this is a general principle that says you can get a hint about what side of the board you can play on based on the direction in which your pawns are pointing.
Okay.
This is something that I first heard when probably last year when Jesse Cry talked about this. Okay, so let me take back the c3 move. Okay, so let's say you're thinking about the position here. You missed that you can win a piece with b4. You're white, and you're thinking about what side of the board is the side that I'm strongest on. So is it the queen side or the king side?
So you're talking about from the white's perspective.
From white's perspective.
It's the queen side.
Okay, so how did you conclude that?
Wait. So I think this is the question. So the pawns are pointing to the black's queen side, but yeah. So, but it's if you look at the squares that the white pawns are defending, it's let's see. So basically, the light square black diagonal, like I don't know how to click on this. So if you
can right click and draw an arrow on the board if you want. Just draw an arrow with the right click.
Right.
Down.
So I'm talking about this diagonal.
Okay.
So that diagonal is like all these squares right here, this one and this one are also being protected. So but are sort of defended by the white thing. So I'm more like thinking this in this direction, like the 1 second. Sorry. How do you delete this thing?
So you just need to redo.
Yeah, basically I'm thinking about two arrows. One is the arrow that goes through the white pawns, but then I'm wondering if this is also restricting play on black's king side. That's what I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, so let me give you one more hint. So think about which side of the board you have more space on and how that relates to the direction in which your pawns are pointing.
From a white's perspective on the queen
or
side.
Black's. Okay, let's talk about white's perspective. So where does
Queen.
white have... Yeah, exactly. So
Queen,
white has more space on the queen side, and that is related to this direction in which his pawns are pointing. And so if you have more space...
Right. Yes. Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Right? Yeah. And so that means that he has more space to maneuver his pieces on the queen side.
Right.
Whereas you will find it difficult to initiate a confrontation on the queen side precisely because white has more space there and has more leeway in how he can arrange his pieces there. However,
so a scenario where, say, the E and D pawns were flipped, like in the sense that it was the white pawn was on D4 and the white pawn was on E5.
Yeah.
Then it's the other way around.
Yeah. So let's just talk about Black's perspective, which is exactly what you have there. Just one rank.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Below. Yeah. So here you have the black points sort of pointing in the in the direction of the king side, right? And so you potentially have more space on the king side, which is why earlier after d5 and all the knight stuff that we talked about, I said f5 could be a potential plan. So there you're playing on the king side because that is your area of the board because you have more space there. And so you have more leeway there. Okay, so I have a question. Okay, so how do you define has more space? Is it by seeing where their farthest pawn is? Yeah, so that's one hint where the farthest pawn is, but also in general, if you have so for example, you can just look at the black pawns here, right? So it's by pointing in that direction. You can actually expand on the king side because you have more space to maneuver your pieces here. Okay, you can do stuff on the king side.
But I have a question. So one difference between the where the black pawns are and the white pawns are is that white pawns are already past the midway line, right? In terms of like the rank on which it is on. So so they're not necessarily equivalent in the sense that the amount of space that black has on the king's side is not necessarily the same as the amount of space that the queen has on the white's. White has on the. Okay, so in some sense, I would interpret this as white actually has more space than black.
Yes, so white definitely has more space. Yeah, precisely because he has the more advanced pawns, and like the real Mojo Mo asked on Twitch, it's so that's the answer. That's part of the answer.
Okay.
So so the farther your pawn chains extend, the more space you have on that side of the board.
Right.
However, there are other aspects that come into play when you decide, for example, an attack on the king is scarier than an attack on the queen side pawns. Right. So if black initiates, dynamic play on the king side after white has castled, then you can distract white from his queen side expansion plans because you can come up with very real attacking threats on his king now that you are starting to play on the king side.
Right.
I mean, again, we don't have to go into such details for a beginner lesson because this takes some experience before you
no problem
start to see moving. These factors. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. C3, not a great move. Okay, knight f6, you develop as usual, which is good. But had you seen that your knight was hanging, then you would have done something about it. Maybe play b6 so that the knight can go back to b7 or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. But since you didn't see that, we'll no longer talk about the hanging knight, except that even much later in the game, you seem to have a hatred for this knight. So we will talk about that then. Okay. So queen a4, and I liked that you saw the queen a4 threat here, and you saw that you can defend with c6, which is a very good pattern because you are defending the knight by opening up your queen and you're blocking the check.
Yeah.
So that's good, but the problem still is that your knight is still hanging, so he can still play b4.
Right.
Okay, bishop g5, and you play the natural unpinning move, bishop e7.
Yeah.
And you ask me why bishop d7 is the better move, because I assume you saw that.
Yes, yeah, in
on the
the
engine.
computer,
Yeah.
engine, computer was saying that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the engine basically says this because it thinks that you're going to lose that knight, but why not do that in a way that you get some compensation for it? Okay, so let's look at how
Okay.
that goes.
Okay.
So bishop d7, let's say he attacks your knight.
Right.
Your knight is trapped.
Mm,
Okay, now you
mm,
capture a pawn.
mm,
He takes your knight,
mm,
exchange queens, and you get this pawn.
mm.
And now what you have here is a case of central control with all of your pawns.
Yeah.
So you're down a piece. Yeah, you're down in material.
Okay.
But
I lost track of the material at that point.
Okay, because your knight is gone, right? You did not get
oh
a piece,
yeah.
piece in
So
return.
correct. Yeah. Okay. So the knight just took a pawn actually. Okay. Yeah. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. So this is something that you need to pay more careful attention to during the game.
Yeah.
Keep track of the pieces that you lose.
Right.
And try to gain them back before you go on an attack.
Okay.
Yeah. So in this variation, you can see that you've won a few pawns in return. Okay.
Yes.
Do you know the relative values of pawns and pieces? I assume you do.
Yeah. So pawn 1, the minor pieces are 3. I think you mentioned something about bishop being more than knight later in the game or something. And then,
I mean that changes depending on the position, but let's just call them equal for now.
3 and rooks are 5s, and I think queens are 8s.
9. Okay.
9.
That's the typical value that's used.
Right.
But we will talk about some more nuanced ways of looking at values later. But this is a good place to start.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now you've won a couple of pawns in return for your piece. So that's 2 points for 3.
2 points for 3. Correct. Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
However, there are additional factors in the position that give you what we call compensation.
Right.
Okay. For that deficit of 1 point.
I see.
And one compensation is your central pawns. Yeah, these 2 pawns are doubled. That is true. However, these pawns very nicely control a lot of central squares.
Yes.
Okay, and central control usually means that white is going to have trouble improving the scope of his pieces, and you have better control just all over the board.
Okay.
Because you control the center with all of these pawns, and then you can control other squares with your pieces. And so you have some compensation in terms of the central control.
I see. Interesting. Okay.
And also you can see, white's pawns are split apart. And so you might eventually even win 1 or 2 more pawns.
Right. Okay. So then compensating for the actual loss of material.
Exactly. So a future potential gain of material also has to figure into your current evaluation of the position.
Okay. So it's not just about, okay, I mean, first of all, I need to learn how to keep count, but there are other aspects that go into the evaluation besides just the relative, the difference between the piece values.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. However, for your next several games, I want you to try to not lose a piece. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So bishop e7 is natural.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is where we will again talk about counting.
Yeah.
Okay. So he captures a piece. You're down a piece now. You have to keep this in mind. You're down a piece, and the move you play is b5. You're going on an attack, thinking that the queen can go back and then you can recapture the piece.
That's exactly what I was thinking, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here we will talk about something that is called Zwischenschuk. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right. It just means intermediate move.
What was the intermediate move? My b5 was an intermediate
No,
move?
the next one that white is going to play. He can insert a move before he has to save his queen.
Right.
So the way you insert a move is either by attacking a very valuable piece, in this case the queen, or if he can give you a check.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
If he can give you a check, then you have to take care of the check before you can do anything else.
Right.
So you have to watch out for these intermediate moves during these piece exchanges. Okay?
Okay.
So here, the intermediate move, as I've shown on the board, is bishop takes e7.
Yeah, I see. I forgot the fact that I'm already down a piece.
Exactly.
That's yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that is why you may even have seen bishop takes e7,
Yes.
but now you're down 2 pieces. If you gain one back, you're still down a piece. Exactly.
Right.
Right.
So I was thinking bishop takes e7, then I take b takes the queen, and then I was thinking, oh, then the bishop takes queen, my king takes the bishop, and I'm like, I'm even. But
Yeah.
I forgot the first knight that was
Yeah,
gone.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, try to be more aware. So anytime
Right.
you lose a piece, you have to, tell yourself that you're minus one piece right now.
Okay.
So you either try to gain it back immediately, or if you play a move such as b5, make sure that he has no intermediate moves such as bishop takes e7 here.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So he refuses again.
Yeah.
And then you simply recapture.
So yeah, I lucked out pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've lucked out at least 2 times, if not more, because there were other moves he could have played b4,
Right.
which he refused to do. So at this level, when you continue not getting punished for hanging pieces, it takes you a lot longer to stop hanging pieces.
Right.
So you just have to make a conscious effort to
Right.
avoid this in your games.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So he plays d takes c6. Yes. So you say this move was probably unnecessary. Yeah, this move is probably unnecessary. He can go about just developing and castling. Right. And so I really like what you did here, which is you did not recapture immediately. So had you taken knight c6, your intuition was he takes bishop takes b5.
Right, and then pinning the knight to the king.
And here and there you can immediately unpin with bishop d7.
Right.
Okay.
I see. Okay.
However, you don't want to give him the opportunity to develop a piece with tempo.
Right. Yes. Okay.
And so that is probably the more important aspect, and which is why I really like your queen b6 move here. Okay, so queen b6, you prevent that bishop from developing by taking your pawn and with a tempo on your c6 knight, and that c6 pawn isn't going anywhere.
What do you mean c6 knight?
Oh, in the other variation, had you taken the pawn with your knight takes c6.
Yes. Okay, yeah, okay.
So here you prevent white from developing his bishop by taking a pawn and with the tempo on your c6 knight.
Yeah, okay.
So in that sense, queen b6, is the correct move there.
Yeah, I didn't realize that's the reasoning behind it, but it seems like it worked out.
Right.
So
next time you make a move like this, you should be thinking about tempi. You should be thinking about not letting white develop with tempi, with a tempo.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
So knight a3, and again, I really like what you do here. You first, just protect your pawn, because you realize that you can always take that c6 pawn later, right?
Yes. Right. Yeah.
Okay. So, and he says b3, and you say that takes away c4 from your knight. Yeah, that's reasonable. And the intention is to trap the knight. Well, the knight can be trapped only if you let him trap your knight. Okay.
Yeah.
But your moves like b3, restricting your pieces, it's not a bad way to play. However, in that position, I'm not sure b3 was even necessary. He should maybe have just put his bishop out and castled. Just keep it simple, at this level.
For white, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you say bishop, you would move it to what?
Just play to e2 or something.
E2. Okay.
Yeah. So it's not clear what the best square for that bishop is, especially now that you shut it down with your a6 b5 moves.
Right.
It's not clear where that bishop is going. But if you just want to castle and bring your rooks out to the d and c files and push some pawns, so that's maybe one way to play it.
Okay.
So knight takes c6 here. Okay, that's good. All right, c4. So these again, all of these confrontational moves before white has developed his pieces and castled, these are these have to be treated with suspicion.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So you see exactly why this is a problem. because you spotted this tactic immediately.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so you took... Alright, so one thing we have to talk about is your time management. So you are down to 10 minutes here.
Yes. Yeah.
So you've spent 20 minutes on all of these moves.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this will get better with practice because this was your, what is it, your first live game?
Yes. First 30-minute game.
First 30-minute game. Yeah, you just need to play some more to get a feel for the passage of time.
I think definitely when that D5 push happened, that's when things went downhill, like panicked big time.
Yeah, so
And
so
I
if you
didn't know
have the
what was
general
going on.
principle in mind that d5 was another pawn push by white,
Right.
okay, so if I lose a tempo, he has also lost a tempo. So tempo is not that big of a deal in that kind of position, and he has weakened squares, so I can also hope to reroute my knight to a better position. And you go ahead with the game then, okay?
Yeah, the other trouble is that when I panic, I'm spending time, but I'm not necessarily thinking clearly. So it's just, it's a mush in my head usually at that point. So I'm just trying to come up with ideas, but nothing actually is clear. And then I end up making a move. Usually I find that when the board opens up a little bit more, that's when I'm able to think a little bit more clearly. Like opening positions and end game positions, I have no idea what's happening. So that's usually the problem also.
I mean, we need patterns and schema to guide our thinking, and if you don't have such a guide, then you're going to think forever and not come up with the proper move in a position. So one of our goals over time is to build firstly tactical patterns, and then some of these opening piece maneuver patterns, like I showed you with the knight rerouting stuff earlier.
Right.
Okay, so here you immediately notice the drawback of the move c4, and queen a5 is a very good move, and so you basically win a piece. Okay, he goes pawn grabbing again. All right, knight b4. Okay, so generally what I would say is that when you make a move, I mean, you have to move your knight here, so that is fine. But let's say your knight wasn't attacked. I also see people at this level making one move threats. So here it is totally fine because you have to move your knight because it is attacked.
Right.
But otherwise, even otherwise, I see people making moves such as knight b4. So I just want you to think about one move threats and try to avoid one move threats unless you have a very clear follow.
So one move threat is basically like it's a pointless threat because
you're attacking the queen,
and the queen just moves away, and then there's no more threat.
Yeah, exactly. But here it's fine. So queen c1. You could have kept queens on the board, but you exchanged queens. And this position, you being a piece up, is so overwhelmingly winning that it doesn't matter what you do. But here I want you to think about another general principle. That is, if your opponent has the weaker king meaning a more exposed king.
Right.
You generally want to keep your queen on the board.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Okay.
That's because the queen controls a lot of squares. It's a very powerful piece. And it is a really scary piece against the king.
Exposed king. Okay.
Exposed king. Exactly.
Okay.
And you are just one move away from castling. So once you castle...
All right. The rook comes out.
The rook comes out. Your queen being on the board, you will pretty soon have some mating threats.
I see. Okay.
Okay. Okay, so this is fine because you're up a piece. It doesn't really matter. Okay, rook takes c1. Bishop g4, which is a reasonable move, but the better move there was just to take the pawn on a2 with your knight.
So okay, so that's interesting because I have the rook is now pointing at the bishop, but you're saying that it's okay because if the rook takes the bishop, they're gonna lose the rook again. So it's
so it's about relative values. He doesn't want to give up his rook for a bishop. You get his rook.
I see. Okay. All right.
3 versus 5. You get the better deal. Right? And the reason I suggest taking the pawn here is not because you want the pawn.
But it's opening up the A file?
No, you're trapping your knight again.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
Do you see it? Let's
Yeah. Okay. I now see it. Yeah, but I never saw it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so let's say you play bishop g4.
Right.
Can you tell me what white has to play here?
Let me see. Okay.
Okay, first look at all the squares available to your knight on b4.
Yes. Yeah. I see that. Yeah. Uh, so I mean, knight can take a2, right?
So here it is white's move. Okay,
Now
so I just
white's
want you
move.
to look at all the squares that are available to your black knight.
White is okay. Yes. So yes, I do see all of those. So there is d3, d5, c6. That's it. And also, sorry, c2. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that.
And that. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so now it's white's move. Can you come up with a knight trap?
Um.
Do you want me to flip the board?
No, I am already. It's black. Oh. Okay. So no, that's fine. That's okay. That's
Okay.
okay. Yeah. So. Mm,
So people in chat can also try to come up with white's move here.
1 second. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
might
Take
be
your time.
able to.
Take your
Yeah.
time.
So. Because I'm thinking I want to be able to trap the knight with a lower valued piece is what I mean. First, I think. Let's see. So if I go there, instinct is to do a3.
Okay.
But then if knight goes to a2,
Mm-hmm.
then so okay, I have troubles visualizing things sometimes. So okay, so a3, then knight goes to a2. Um,
Hey Shivam, you're way too advanced for this.
yeah. Okay. So let's see. Do I have a square? Rook c2.
Okay, so tell me the moves again. First move,
A3.
a3, and then black goes
Knight a2.
a2, and then white goes
Yeah, white goes rc2.
rook c2, and then what does the knight do?
Uh, mm, Knight doesn't have a square to go.
Yeah, you
Okay.
got it.
Okay.
So
Right,
the
okay.
real Mojamo, yeah. So a3 is the correct move, but you need to visualize just one move deeper and see that after knight a2, if white plays rook c2, the knight is trapped. So
But
again,
this is the same scenario as before. Like I didn't see the before earlier. Is the same situation here, right? I did
yeah.
not
So you've
consider
trapped
that.
the same piece again,
Yeah.
much later on in the game.
Yeah.
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 So
Right.
so how can you sense during the game that your piece is vulnerable? So just look at all the squares available to the knight, and you can see that all but one square, right, is they're unsafe for the knight.
Well, what do you mean the a2 square?
Yeah, except for the a2 square, everywhere else, right? So
Yeah.
the knight cannot go anywhere else.
Right. Okay.
And once you see that feature in the position, you have to always be careful. As black, you have to be careful, and as white, you have to look for a tactic that wins that piece.
Leverage that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so he refuses again. And castling, yeah, castling is fine. You bring the other rook. b7, and you rightly just ignore it. You know, there's no way that pawn is queening. Yeah, all of that is fine. So these are the less important parts of the game that I thought, you know, I think we've discussed the most important aspects. You're already up a piece here. Yeah, so you just take that, and now you win the rook, and this is all over now.
Okay. Yeah, so at this point, I didn't realize why white didn't take my knight.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't quite understand the idea behind knight d2 or
No,
from.
there's no specific idea. I mean,
Okay, all
it's
right.
just people at this level.
Moving
They
pieces.
either refuse to take pieces or they gift you their pieces. That's
Okay, all right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, nice finish. Yeah, so here you ran out of time and you could not complete the mate, but like I said,
Yeah.
with more experience, you will begin managing your time better. And we can
Yeah.
also talk about time management later.
Sounds
Okay.
good. Yeah. Okay, this is good. I think some important concepts in the beginning, especially counting pieces, making sure that when you move a piece, is there a potential attack coming, and evaluating what squares to go to that way. So yeah, that's good.
Okay.
This is good stuff. Okay.
So it took us almost 1 hour to get through the game. So what I
Okay.
think we should do now is, instead of talking about the Chernev
Yeah.
game, we'll talk
Okay.
about these tactical patterns.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to that study that I made.
Right. Let's see.
Yeah.
My study. Where is that again? Public studies. Hold on.
So you should look for studies I contribute to.
I got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so first position, the question is, can white capture the pawn or not? And you should be really quick at telling me whether this is possible. Is it safe for the white rook to capture the pawn on e5?
When you say can, you're talking about evaluation, I suppose.
Is it safe? That's the question.
Safe in terms of, like, am I going to lose a piece or value? That's your question,
yes,
right? Okay,
yes.
yeah, okay. So no, because there's no, because at the end there will be one black rook remaining.
Okay, so what did you just do? Did you actually calculate it?
Yes, I tried.
So you went rook takes e5, rook takes e5, rook takes e5, rook takes e5, and you have a black rook that's remaining?
Yes.
Yeah, so calculation is important, but here all you need to do is, you see that there are two black rooks supporting that pawn, two white rooks attacking that pawn, and as long as they're even, it is not safe to capture that pawn.
We talked about something earlier in the game, right, where you had equal pieces, but it seemed to be in that equal attackers and defenders on a square, and it's in that situation it happened to be fine.
To win material, you need one more attacker than defender.
To win material.
To win material. So there we were talking about piece exchanges, right? Here you're talking about capturing a pawn.
Okay, so when you say capture a pawn, means like you want to end up with the net positive value. That's what you're trying to say.
Yeah. So here.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, here had it been a third rook on e5.
You're right.
Okay, imagine this hypothetical.
Yeah. Then you would. Yeah, then you would end up with.
Yeah, but here you're talking about capturing something of lower value, and then you want to make sure that you end up on top. And the way to end up on top is to have one more attacker than defender.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
So that's a simple way in which to look at this. You don't even have to calculate it. Okay.
Okay. Let's see.
Okay. Next question. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Because you have 3 white pieces attacking the knight compared to 2 defenders.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that was quick, right?
Okay. So, but you would always start your capture with knight takes knight, and then bishop takes knight, and then bishop takes bishop, and then rook takes bishop, and that's probably how it would happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. In this specific position, it doesn't matter what you capture with first. You can either take with the bishop or knight.
Yeah.
However, there's an additional thing that you need to be aware of in this position, and that's the
back rank mate.
Back rank stuff, but also pins. Okay, so let's say you capture this.
Yeah.
So this is pinned right now.
Right. Yeah.
However, there's a trick that makes f6 not strong.
Okay, I see.
So okay. Now let's say I do this, trying to take advantage of the pin to try and win the piece back. What do you do as white?
Okay, give me a second. So my immediate thinking was trying to see if I could like give a check somewhere and then like sort of deflect that attack. And let's see, can I do a check? No. Mm, well, I can. Oh well, that's okay. So what if I move my knight uh, back and defend the rook?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So that's not a
So
check. Okay,
that
yeah.
is why this technique works in the position.
Right. So we actually won the knight, but then you just move back and you're back
Yeah.
to okay. Right, right.
So I don't have this here, but let's imagine this rook was on e2. And then let's say you captured with the bishop. There are these pinning techniques that can work.
I see. Okay.
Because you know, for example, you cannot move the knight back to protect something that's on e2.
Right, right, right.
Okay, so you have to be aware of these tactics too when you initiate these captures. You
I
have
see.
to watch
Okay.
out for tactics. But here the
Gotcha.
tactics work in your favor because of the position of these pieces.
Right. Okay.
Okay. All right, so with that, let's introduce the notion of a pin. So you probably know what a pin is, right? And so the question is, how do you set up a pin in this position?
I am white.
You're white,
right?
yeah, white to
Yeah.
move.
Okay. Bishop b3.
Bishop b3. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so that's good. And so there's no getting out of this pin. So you even if the king moves here, you know, you can just take you can still take the rook. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a simple one. Okay, so the next question is, how do you exploit a pin? So in this position, you already have a pin.
Right. Let's see. Exploiting a pin. Okay. So I'm looking at the pinned piece, and it has two defenders and two attackers. And if I can, I'm trying to think if I can remove it, like drive away one of the defenders. Would it be possible to win the piece? Is one thought that came to my head.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, that is, I am not seeing it. Okay, so what? Or you can add an attacker.
Precisely.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, so d4.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Okay. And that should win you the knight.
I see.
Okay, so keep in mind this concept of taking advantage of a pin.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Because we are going to keep building on this. All right.
Okay.
White to move again.
Okay, where is the pin is the question. So, wait, I can't spot the pin. Hold on.
Okay.
So a valuable piece should be behind. Oh, okay, okay. It's the pawn. It's the pawn that is. That's correct. Is the d5 pawn we are talking about? That's the pin, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So again, the idea that you have the queen and the rook, sort of putting pressure on that, and there's a queen behind it. So let's see. Oh, okay. What if the C, basically the c4 pawn is hanging. I don't know if hanging is the right word, but you cannot, if I take knight takes c4, that's a free pawn.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a pawn is a pawn. Okay. So
right.
You have to be aware of just these tactics. You don't always have to win a piece. You can just win a pawn, and this position is much better for white after you do that.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So the next one is black to move. And you know, our knowledge of tactics can be used not only to win pieces ourselves, but also to make safe moves when it's our turn and when it's when it's our position that's under a pin.
So what are we are under? We are pinned because the knight is front. The knight is in front of the queen, and right. That so the knight is pinned right
Yeah.
now. Okay. So
And also, can you also look at how many attackers and defenders for that knight?
one defender, two attackers.
Okay. So it's black to
Okay.
move.
It's black to move.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. Give me a second. So. Okay, so no. What if I okay, so if I move my knight, then my queen is under attack, but I can defend that queen by maybe going to ne7.
Okay.
So basically I'm saying that even if queen takes queen, I can just take back the queen.
Right. Did you consider rook d8 at all?
Which one?
Rook d8 to protect the knight a second time because you have two attackers and two defenders. Did you consider that at all?
D8.
Yeah, d8. Just putting the rook behind the knight.
No, I did not.
Okay, because you saw knight e7 and that was good enough, right?
So okay, so what is the idea? So you do rook d8, and then
yeah, what happens if you do rook d8? Make a move for white in that case.
Well, I mean, you can have knight b4, right?
Yeah, so
Is that a
knight
problem?
b4 or knight c3. So just attacking that piece again is a problem.
Yeah.
Right? And also in general, you don't want to be getting into more pins.
Right. So I think my question is this. Yes, I'm adding defenders and attackers. So you're saying that I don't have to sort of release the pin? I can just keep...
No, I'm saying rook d8 is a bad move, but I just wanted to see if you had seen why it was a bad move.
Oh, okay. So rook d8 is not... No, okay, so what is the better move?
The better move is what you played. Knight e7 is the correct move.
Okay. So
yeah.
remove the pin and simultaneously defend the piece that was behind.
Yes, that's the best solution here.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
All right. So very good. Okay, so again, I want you to use your knowledge of pins to make a move for black here. Okay, so white has just played rook d3 to rook d6, attacking your queen. Okay?
Okay.
Now I'm going to remove all of this. Okay, so now it's black to move.
Okay, give me a second. So, queen is being attacked by this thing. Okay. No. Okay. So. Okay.
Hey Swapnil, thanks for the subscription.
Okay, so so here, so when I'm okay, so if I'm using, are we thinking pins here? Like, do I know that is what I'm looking for?
So you need to move the queen, right?
Yeah, I need to move the queen, and I'm trying to.
Yeah, all I'm asking you is to find the best square for the queen to move to.
Okay, let's see. So I did that. Let's see. There are not too many squares to go to, so.
Okay, so can you tell me the squares that are sort of safe?
Yeah, so I can't be on the sixth rank. Yeah, I can't be on the 6th rank.
Right.
Because okay. So basically, now I have the diagonal left. Now, so I can't put it on D file. That's also gone. And then you have C. You have B. I'm debating b3, but I'm unsure about what would happen if rook does d2, rd2 or something, and then basically, um, yeah, I'm okay. So if I go there, unclear. I'm not sure about how to.
Okay, so let me ask you about this square versus this
Okay.
square
Yeah.
versus this, for example.
Right. Yeah, I didn't consider the ones behind. Yeah. Okay. So if I go to f7,
Mm-hmm.
uh, what happens? F7. Hmm. I'm unsure. I don't know what exactly to think there.
Okay,
So
so
yeah.
if black plays queen f7,
Yes.
so anytime you consider a move like this during your games, right, you need to think about what white's next move is going to be,
Right.
and then you need to
So
check for tactics.
yeah. So it could be like R. What if? Okay. Okay. So if okay. So black plays f7. Then what if rook plays f6, and then that's a pin.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's a
So it's
pin.
not a good move, right? Because
It's
then because I can't do queen takes f6 because now I'm gonna lose my queen.
yeah, you
Uh,
lose a queen in return for a rook, which is not a good deal for you.
right. So don't do f7 is the
Yeah,
conclusion.
don't do f7. There are other safe squares like b3. I
Right.
think is fine. I'm just gonna turn on the engine to make sure I'm not blundering anything. Yeah, so both. Yeah, so queen b3 and queen g8 are fine.
Okay. What about a2?
A2 should also be all right.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, just
Okay, so
avoid going here or making an obvious blunder. Okay, so avoid queen
right.
f7 or any of these obvious squares,
Okay, so that's
and you
what you
should be
mean.
fine.
You like don't run into pins is what you're telling
Yeah,
me.
don't run into tactics. So anytime you make a move, when you evaluate whether the move is safe, you need to check for tactics from the other side. And so
Okay.
this puzzle is to illustrate that when you learn about pins, it is often uh, easy for you to play your tactics from your position. But it is also important to try and think about these tactics for your opponent when you make a move. Because
Hmm.
it is very easy to blunder into something like queen f7 if
I
you don't
see.
do that.
So okay, here's a question. So imagine, so there's no requirement that in a pin, the piece that is attacking the pinned piece is of higher value than the pinned piece, right? There's no reason for that. So my
Uh,
question is this: imagine in a scenario where say you have queen f7 and then you said rook f6 would essentially pin the queen to the knight to pin the queen,
mm-hmm.
but you have so had it been an imaginary scenario where the queen was of much lower value than the
Yeah,
rook,
yeah.
then it's not a problem, right? Because my queen is actually being defended by the king anyway.
Well, if let's say you have a rook here that pins a knight to the king,
Yeah.
and let's say you have a pawn over here
Mm.
that can attack the knight next move, and your knight cannot move. That is still a problem, right? Because now you have
So
something of
now
lower
I'm going.
value coming in to attack that piece.
Oh, right, right. But then, okay, so then, okay, yeah, okay, all right,
Okay,
yeah,
so and this
yeah,
is also similar to what we talked about in the earlier puzzle.
right, right, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
so
That's
it's not so much about the value about the thing that's doing the pinning, but whether or not you can exploit that pin using something of lower value
right,
in
right.
those cases. But here, of course, when it is a lower value piece such as the rook pinning a higher value piece such as the queen, then you can obviously directly take it too.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah. So K Beds asks a question: Queen B3 attacks the rook 2. Is it? Let's see.
Yeah. So that's what
Is that the
what
best
was my.
then? Yeah,
But
that's
it's a
possibly a
single move
factor.
threat, right? But
Well,
I thought.
firstly, it's not a threat in this position because the rooks support each other.
Right.
However, I think K-Bits' point is that it at least prevents this other rook from doing something else because
Right.
you are threatening to take that rook.
Right.
So in
Yeah.
that sense, maybe that's a slightly better move for that reason.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's move on to getting an. So I want to assess what you know about these basic endgame mates. Yeah, K-Beds. Yeah, that's great. So this show and the series is for beginners. So feel free to ask your questions. Okay. All right. So this is a basic two rook versus king scenario. So I
Okay.
want you to tell me how you would go about this position. So you're black.
So some things that I think I've read somewhere. I think it was a chess.com thing where you sort of where it talked about how you want to try to push the king to the edge of the board, and then like sort of trap it on the corners of the edges. So here I'm seeing that the sixth rank is cut off. So I would. Uh, my thinking is that I can maybe start pushing this white king to the top of the board is what
Okay.
I'm thinking. So I don't know if I can do this.
Okay. Good.
And
Okay.
now
Let me.
it
I'll make the
okay.
move for white. Okay.
Yeah. See, that's the part which kills me because then then I okay, so maybe that did not work because I'm gonna lose the rook now. Or maybe
Just remember, you have all the time in the world in the position.
okay, so okay, so here if okay, this is a problem because I have to now defend my rook. Um,
Hey, the real Mojamo. Yeah, I will make these studies public, and if you follow me on Twitter, I can link you to these studies.
I'm thinking if it is I think I'm already not in a good place. But what if I do? I have to defend the rook is what I'm thinking. What if I do RH5 or RG6? But then I think I have to use the king somehow. I guess to not let the white king come close to my rook somehow. I think those are some of the thoughts that I'm having.
Okay, so the thought about not letting the white king come close to your rooks is a good one. Now,
Yeah.
can you think of another way in which you can get that white king farther away from your rooks, or vice versa? So
You mean from this current position or from where we started?
from here, you said
Okay.
you want to get the white king away from your rooks.
Yeah. So I can move the rook away. And what if I do R RGH5? Or hold on. Let's see. Can't do this. No. Should I swing the rook to the other side of the board? I'm unsure.
Okay. Yeah. So what you said at the very end there is the correct thing to do, because the general technique is you want to do this kind of thing, right?
Right. Oh, yeah. But you don't want the king to come down as well.
Yeah. So
yeah. Okay.
Okay. So basically, what you do here is, let me remove these arrows. Yeah. So like you said, let's say you swing the rook over to the side.
Yeah.
You're
so,
still
okay.
You're still cutting off.
So you don't have to, yeah. So you don't have to give the check every single time or anything. You're just gonna make sure that it can't move downwards. It can't. It has to keep moving, if at all, to the edge.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, you can afford to spend one move on making sure that your rook is safe.
Right.
While maintaining the advantage of keeping that rook on that rank, which is preventing the king from escaping downwards.
Right. So, okay. So what would be the next move?
Okay. So next move, let's say I am really annoying and I go here.
Right. I knew that was coming. So now Uh, oh, okay. This is tricky. So can't come down. Now I can't put a check on H file because then that's not possible. Um, mm, am I gonna still use the rook on H5, A5 to do something, or
So if you move this rook away from this rank,
right?
then
That's
I'll just come down here.
right. So I'm unsure. I'm unsure
Okay,
about how.
yeah. Let
Okay.
me let me just give you the technique.
Yeah.
So ideally you would want to make this move, right?
Yes.
But you cannot do that because the king has moved there.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So what you can do is do exactly the same thing, something like this.
Okay.
And now I cannot be annoying, right?
Yeah. Right.
Because now I'll try to be annoying and you say, all right, you can do what you want.
Oh. Okay. 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 So you're saying that if the king comes to your rook, swing over to the other side and keep doing the
Yeah,
same
just
thing.
maintain a safe distance, but
And
maintaining this construction where you're staggering between your two rooks and pushing the king backwards by one rank each time. Anytime
I
the king gets close to your rook, swing it over to the other side, but make sure that you don't swing the rooks over such that they line up like this, because you want to stagger them, right, when pushing the
yes.
king.
Yes. Yeah. That's right. Right.
Okay.
Okay. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I can continue trying to come
Right.
close, and let's say we get here. What do you do?
Uh, something like this, maybe.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
And let's say
Yeah.
I do this.
Um. Uh, do I? Wait. Hold on. Is this done? No. Uh, oh yeah. Okay.
Very good. And then,
Yeah. That's it.
yep, very good.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so
Oh, I
that's
see. I
so
see.
that's the basic technique. When you have two rooks, you don't really need to use your king.
I see.
The two
Okay.
rooks by themselves can push the other king to the edge of the board.
Right. Right. Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. All right. So next, let me just talk about this notion of the opposition. So this is now how a concept that relates to how you use your king to control the squares that your opposing king can go to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're white, where do you want to place this king next,
I'll
in order to
risk.
prevent this king from going in this direction?
Right at C5.
Yeah, c5,
Yeah.
because it controls all of these squares,
Three squares. Correct. Yeah.
right? If
Yeah.
you go here, then the
Uh,
king can just go here, for example.
right. Right. It's only
So
two of the three possible squares that's being defended.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
in combination with other pieces, when you want to push this king to the edge of the board,
Right.
right, this is a useful technique to, and this is,
Go directly at it.
yeah, go directly at it. One square in between is called the direct opposition.
I see. Okay. Okay.
Okay,
That's the name. Okay.
that is
That's
the
what
name.
it's
That is
called.
what it's called.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
gaining the opposition. So if it's your turn, and if you can get to a point where you're one square away, directly in confrontation, that is called the
Yeah.
opposition. And this is a very useful technique in many end games that we will talk about later.
I see. I
Okay.
see. Yeah.
All right. So the next one again is a very simple end game mate that you should know about.
Right. Okay.
So
So let's see. So I'm thinking. Uh, uh, hold on. You you cannot. Okay. So a couple of things. You cannot put the queen in a square right next to the king, black king, unless you have the king supporting that. That's the other thing.
yes.
The other thing is that you cannot do a queen checkmate in the middle of the board, because there's always this diagonal direction where you can go to, where so you have to sort of push it to the edge somehow, and then support the queen with the white king and then finish the checkmate. That's sort of the idea
That's
then.
the sort of idea, and also at the very end, be careful to not allow stalemates. Okay, so
Oh
we,
yeah, yeah. Right,
yeah,
right.
we will talk about that when we get the black king to the edge of the board.
Okay, so what if I do this first?
Okay.
Okay, so so now, mm, I don't know if this would work. Maybe.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine.
Okay. Yeah. Um. Okay, so now if I do,
Okay.
okay, so let's see. Mm, I'm okay. So here, okay. So what if I do this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so uh, let's see. Is this what I want? Maybe.
Yeah, that's fine. Let me just go back a move and just tell you that this is something that you want to avoid.
Because it's not a check, but there's no valid square for the king to move.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a stalemate.
Okay.
Yeah, so in general here, if you go to the 7th rank, okay, and then all you have to do here is,
I mean, okay. What do you mean? All you have to do? Does it mean that it's done? Okay.
no,
Yeah, it is. No, no, it's not. No, it's not. You keep pushing to the side, probably.
yeah, but so
Yeah.
let me just
Go back.
do this. Go back. So here it's so the general thing is you use your king here because this threatens mate here. Okay, keep moving your king.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay.
It threatened
Okay.
mate here, and this king can also go here because it's mate here or here.
Right. So it has to keep moving to the
Yeah, you
corner now.
can use just your king to push this king to the corner.
Right. Right. And just do the final blow with the queen.
Yeah, and
last time.
here you can deliver checkmate.
Check. Okay. Okay. I see.
All right, so that's the general technique. So yeah, use both the king and the queen. You now know this rule of opposition. So that's one useful technique that you can use.
Yeah.
Just a second. My friend asked a question. Corner the king with queen alone and only bring the king later. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I'll think about that. So Shivam says you can use the queen, just the queen by itself, to try and push the king towards the edge of the board. That's another technique that we can practice.
I see. And then king
bring
later.
then bring the king later. But in a practical situation, what you did here is totally fine.
I see. Okay.
That's just trying to train how to use the queen to control squares. That's just a useful exercise.
Right.
Okay, so let me go to this next exercise.
Right.
Okay. So we've talked about tactics. We've talked about some basic endgame stuff. Now let's talk about calculation. Now, usually, before we talk about calculation, we need a strong tactical foundation, which is what we did with the pins.
Yeah.
But what I want you to do next week is to practice just tons of tactics involving just pins to get pins down. Okay? Because when you calculate, all of these tactics should basically come flowing to you. And so to do that, we need this tactical foundation that you can build first by doing these blocked tactical patterns, pins 1 week, discoveries another week, and so on, and then then move to mixed tactics.
Okay. Yeah. So what are we doing here?
So here we are going to talk about a systematic way to calculate.
Okay.
And So the basic recommendation is that when you begin to calculate, you look at the most forcing moves first. And what do I mean by forcing moves? Can you try to explain what a forcing move is?
That the if you do a forcing move, the opponent has to take care of it before being able to do anything else.
Exactly.
Like
So yeah,
check as an example, right? Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
yeah, so checks are the most forcing of all forcing moves.
Right.
Okay, so you have to react to a check.
Yeah.
After checks, you have checks captures. Okay, so if you capture something, then he has to try to regain material. Right, so that is also forcing in that sense.
Yeah.
Then there are threats that you can make. So if you move a pawn and threaten to kill a queen,
Yeah.
right, that's a major threat that he has to react to.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Okay, so checks, captures, threats, and finally you also have pawn breaks.
Right.
Such as the f5 that we discussed in your game,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah.
when you play a move like f5, usually white has to react to it because you're threatening sometimes to open up the position. And if you open up the position, maybe you have a bishop pair that you can make use of. These are slightly advanced concepts,
Right.
but
Right.
there are some positional pluses that you can gain via these pawn breaks. So pawn breaks are also sort of forcing moves in that regard.
I see.
Okay, so forcing moves in the order of importance are checks, captures, threats, and pawn breaks.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and RB Ramesh has this way of remembering this order. He just calls it CCTP. Okay, CCTP: checks, captures, threats, and pawn breaks.
Pawn breaks. Okay.
Okay, so now let's look at this position. I have a question. So K-Bet's capture was actually taking a piece, and then the opponent should respond to it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so if you capture something, then you force the opponent to do something about it, right? So you cannot just capture a rook, and the opponent cannot ignore you if you just take his rook. So a capture is also a forcing move.
Unless the opponent was planning to give up on that rook for something
Exactly,
else.
unless it's a piece sacrifice and you get mated in return.
Yeah, but
that is also a reaction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so think about this position: white to move. And the systematic way to do this is the very first move that you consider for white. You start with checks.
Okay. So let me try to do that. Okay. So I can see two checks that could be given, but if I do that check, the king is just gonna take my piece. So
okay. So let me also tell you something else.
Yeah.
When you check these checks, even if the king kills your piece, takes your piece, you need to look slightly deeper.
Okay.
Okay. And when you look deeper, at every step of this calculation process, you need to consider the most forcing moves
from each side,
from both sides at every step of the way.
Okay. Okay. All right. So if I most forcing thing. Okay. So let's see. Okay. So if I do bishop takes h7, sorry, bishop h6 check. Okay. King takes h6. And I just lost my bishop, and I mean I cannot do queen f4 check or anything because queen will take queen. But I can do queen f8 check.
Very good. Okay.
Which means now the king has to go to king has to go to either h5. Oh, sorry, the bishop's not there anymore. Sorry. Okay, so the king okay, basically the king can move to what is it, g6, G5 or H5.
Okay, very good. You considered
Okay.
all candidate moves at that step. I like that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So now, which one would it go to is the question.
Let me just ask you about h5.
Yeah. H5 is a problem potentially because I can do G4 and do a fork.
Exactly, because that's the
Yeah.
most forcing move in that position, right?
Right.
So you can eliminate h5, right?
Because black wouldn't want to do that, right?
Yeah.
So black wouldn't go to H5. If black goes to uh, if black goes to G6, then I have Queen G8 check, which again ends up with king being on H5.
Or
Uh, or oh, I keep forgetting that my bishop's not there. That's the problem.
yeah,
So, or
yeah.
it could go into F4, King F4.
Well, your king is on g6 in that position. So your king is on g6, the white queen is on
Sorry.
g8.
Yeah.
So you said the king has to go to h5, but I'm saying the king can also go to another square in that position.
Sorry. I meant okay. H6.
Right. And so
Okay.
then white has to repeat moves with queen f8 check.
Yeah.
And that doesn't lead anywhere, but I think black can just go to g5, king g5.
King G5. Okay. So basically now
The king can
okay, King
probably escape.
G5.
Maybe Neil in chat can correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe the king escapes there.
King escapes through via what, F4 and all. That's the idea.
Yeah, that's one possibility.
Yeah. Okay. So we
Because if the king is on g5 and your queen goes to g8 check, you have queen g6 to block that check.
Okay. So basically, what is the idea? So basically, the whole thing about starting with bishop was not a good idea. Is what you're saying?
So that is what you should conclude from that, because you did not come to a clear checkmate or any such clear conclusion from going down this line, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. What if I do? But I can't do queen F8 check because again the queen would just take the king would just take the queen, and there's well, hold on. No, hold on. Okay, so wait. So if I take that, then I do bishop h6 check, then king can't go to the e file. So now king has to go to g8, and then it's mate on. Is that mate? Yeah, right. It's rook e8.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. That.
Yeah. So that's your, probably one of your first combinations that you've played. So when you get to this
that
position,
is interesting. Okay.
yeah. So you just, I don't know if you've been able to sacrifice a queen in your puzzles so far, but this is an example of a.
Yeah, occasionally.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So here you played the most forcing moves. You looked at bishop h6, like Neil says in chat. You did a great job of visualizing what happens.
Yeah.
Right.
So what I completely missed out until now was the idea that this whole e file was blocked by the rook, right? So basically the thing was that after the king gets to f8, it can only move to the right, because there's no, that's the part which was sort of that's where it was like, oh, I think it's not bad.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you did really well on that. Yeah. Okay. So good job. So that's forcing moves. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Let me show you a slightly more complicated example. This is from RB Ramesh's, one of RB Ramesh's classes, but I thought this was a good example too.
Okay, let's see. So I'm gonna look for a CCTP. So check. Do I have a check here? I do. Okay, so okay, so there are. So there are three things that I'm seeing for checks, right? So one is queen d8 check, queen d7 check, bishop c6 check. These are the three options that I'm seeing.
Okay.
So what the queen is being supported by the rook. But in either d7 or d8, basically the black queen can take back the queen, and if I take the rook, you end up losing the rook.
That's right.
Um,
And also
okay.
on d7, you don't have
Now
to take with the queen. Just to note
take
that.
it with the right. So you can take it with the bishop, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I do, um, uh, if I do bishop c6 check, uh, okay, let's see. Is that a good idea? But I have you'll just have the pawn take the bishop, and then I mean I can take the bishop, right? So if I do bishop c6 check,
Mm-hmm.
b x c b pawn takes c6.
Yeah.
I can now take queen takes c5,
Uh-huh.
but it's still I just lost a bishop. I took a bishop back.
Yeah.
But then does black have any forcing moves here? I don't see any immediate checks or anything.
Okay.
Mm, I am, yeah.
All right. So that's good. But one other thing that I want you to do is to look at all candidate moves for your opponent. So after
Okay.
bishop c6 check, did you look
Bishop.
at what happens after queen takes c6? Do you know what happens after that?
No. I did. So okay, the reason why I didn't go for that first is because I was thinking, why if we can take a piece with a lower valued piece, that's sort of what I was thinking. That's why I was thinking the pawn would be the preferred piece to take it. I didn't consider that the queen taking the bishop yet.
Okay.
So let's consider that. So if I take a bishop check, queen takes bishop. So now the problem is that d8 square is only defended by the king, and so that's a mate now.
Exactly.
Right. So I think I saw that earlier,
Okay.
but I didn't consider that deeply. Maybe I wasn't necessarily conscious about it, but
Okay.
I think that's I did see that happening. But yeah.
Okay, that's good.
So that's not a good move. You wouldn't probably do queen takes bishop because that's mate in next move.
Yes. So it is that factor
Okay.
that makes bishop c6 check a good move here, because the other line that you provided, the pawn takes the bishop and you take the bishop. White has gained something positionally for this. So often you can make forcing moves to not gain material, but you can make positional gains. Okay. So what are the positional gains after that position? So you go to bishop c6 check, the pawn takes the bishop, your queen takes the bishop on c5.
Can I play it?
No.
Can I play it
No.
here?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. All right. So I take the. Okay. So you're forcing me to visualize. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I'm on the if I so finally so you have the black pawn on c6 and my queen just took the bishop and now the queen is on c5. Okay. So now basically the black pawn being on c6 has sort of restricted the queen's influence, maybe the black queen's influence.
Yeah, that's sort of fair. Yeah.
I am okay. No.
Okay. So what does black want to do in the position?
In which position after all this exchanges?
Yeah, after all this, or just in general. In this position, if you were playing black and you were coming up with a plan of action, what would you want to do?
I want to get my bishops out.
And
Uh, what do you mean and?
Something
But
else
I
you
don't
want to
have
do? What?
castle.
Yeah. So
Castle.
these are the general principles, right, of opening play.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So you want a castle. You want to bring out your bishops.
Oh,
Right.
but you can't castle on the king's side because the thing is now pointing in that direction.
Exactly. So after
Okay,
all
okay.
of that, after the capture on c5, yeah, you're blocked from
Castling.
castling,
Okay.
and the
Okay.
queen is stuck defending that c6 pawn.
Right, and bishop has no, basically
Yeah,
stuck right
and
now.
now
Yeah.
you have this square on d6 that you can take advantage of. Let me just point that to you.
Right,
With
right. Yeah,
maneuvers like knight here and knight here.
I
So
see.
overall, with
Interesting.
this tactic, you've basically not gained any material, but you've gained a lot of positional pluses.
Okay, so that's the kind of evaluation that I'm not, I don't fully
Yeah.
understand
So
yet.
I
Yeah, yeah,
realize that this is a step above where you are currently, but
yeah.
I want you to be aware of these forcing moves. In that you can play forcing moves not to win material, but there are also these other considerations in chess.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
but you
Okay.
will
Yeah.
get exposed to more such patterns as you go over annotated games, and so you will
I
learn
see.
about this, and also when you analyze your games. But I just wanted to illustrate that this is one other possibility. You don't always have to win material.
Right. Okay.
Okay, and
Sounds good.
okay, so the final thing, we've already gone way over time, but the final thing I want you to look at is this puzzle. It is actually a very beautiful puzzle,
Mm, mm.
but this demonstrates that once you have patterns built in, then you can find these beautiful combinations over the board, hopefully. And this is an
Okay.
illustration of that. So again, just think forcing moves. Okay, take a few minutes. Think forcing moves.
Okay. So I can see the rook check. Uh, hmm. Okay. So. Hmm, hmm, So if I do that, da, da, da. Okay. So I'm thinking. Immediately, what comes to my mind is re1 check.
Mm-hmm.
Where now king goes to g2.
Mm-hmm.
Now my thinking is that I want to like basically this diagonal right here, between this diagonal, if I can somehow block that or something. That's my thinking. But basically now, well, not block, but the king cannot move into h3
Right.
because of this bishop. But I want to also be able to deliver a check somehow to actually. So I'm thinking right now, mm, queen e6, um, with an idea that I can potentially give check and check on h3, and that would be it. But uh, which means now the white has to. Well, probably not, because you have g4
Very good.
that could yeah, g4, uh, which also means that it opened up the g3 square for the king.
Mm-hmm.
Mm, uh, all right. So
Okay. So
now,
now take a step back
yeah.
and
Okay.
think forcing moves. Again, that's the theme here.
Yeah. So
So you went rook e1 check, king g2, and hold that position.
okay.
Hold that
Uh,
position,
mm.
and
Okay.
now
So
think about
what?
the most forcing moves in that situation.
Yeah. So okay. So one thing would be to, like, you really have to deal with it would be rg1 check, which means that now king has to take it back.
Okay.
Take back. Well, yeah, correct. Yeah, king has to take it because king can't go to h3 because of the bishop. So
Mm-hmm.
king takes the rook.
Yep.
But now you can do queen e1 check.
Good. Okay.
So now the king has to go back to um, g2.
Okay.
Uh, Okay. Let's see. Okay, so now if I do bishop c3 check, then king has to take the bishop. But and if I do queen f1 check, now the king has to come out into the open space, which is like g4 or h4.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm thinking if there is some, if you can trap this thing with the pawn is what I'm thinking,
Okay.
like pawn
So
and the
at this
king
point, again,
on
it's
that
starting to
side, right?
become unclear, right?
Erratic, unclear. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Now
yeah.
think back to the other puzzle that you solved with forcing moves. So go back to the position with the king on g2, your queen on e1,
Yes.
and there you checked bishop h3 check, right?
Yes.
What is the other forcing move?
Other forcing move would be, um, I mean, you. What? Well, let's see.
You did this before.
Uh, One sec.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Take your time.
so wait. So I cannot do. I don't want to do H. I don't know if this is making sense. So queen. If I do queen g1 check, I'm losing the queen, is what I'm thinking right now.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also have the rook coming.
Okay,
I can
is
do rook.
queen g1 the only check you have?
No, I have a bunch of checks, right? I can do g1, f1,
Okay,
h1,
so
f,
you,
even like take f2. But
okay,
that's
so
yeah.
you haven't checked any of those checks, and so that is that is you straying away from the systematic process of calculation.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so you checked queen g1 check and concluded that that wasn't probably good enough.
Yeah. But my point is that any of those checks are literally one square away from the king. Um.
Okay, just hang on a second.
Oh.
Okay, hang on a second.
Oh. Hold on.
Okay,
Yeah. Hold on.
just
Okay.
want you to think about this position.
Mm,
Do you see this position that you solved earlier?
yes.
Okay, now let's go back. Now think back to the position that you calculated with the king on g2 and the queen on e1.
Yes, I think I see it. Okay, all right. So if I so queen is on e1, king is on g2.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm gonna do f1 check.
Good.
So king takes f1. I
Yes.
do bishop c3 check.
Bishop h3.
Now h3 check. Sorry, h3 check. And now I can't. The king has to move in the other direction. So now rook e1 check.
Checkmate.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so this is exactly the same pattern that you saw here.
Right, but the fact that I have to give up my king and the rook, the queen and the rook to deliver this final checkmate is scary.
Yeah, so
I
yeah.
don't even consider that, right?
Yep.
Because I'm already losing so many materials.
Yeah, so all of these is forcing, and here the technique is to have the next move also be a check.
Right. But it matters like what is the correct check that you deliver, right? So that's the thing. So I could have given to so that is the part which is hard.
So so had you checked here, the next move is not a check. That gives white time.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
The same deal with h1 check. Because the next move doesn't come with check. Well, the bishop doesn't come with check.
Bishop doesn't come with check.
Because the rook check doesn't make sense in that position, because once your king comes to g2,
then
there's no h3 check.
There's no
bishop h3
right.
check.
Exactly. Correct.
Okay, so you need to find a way to deliver that check with the bishop on the next move, which is why, that works.
All right.
All
okay.
right.
So this is good.
Yeah. So that's an illustration of how once you build your patterns, then you begin to see what the goal of your calculation needs to be.
Right.
So you can make that pattern a goal of your calculation and try to get to that position. Right? So that will make finding these things during your games much easier. So the only way to do that is to keep practicing these tactics.
Okay.
Over the next week, I would recommend that you work on pins primarily.
Pins. Okay. All right. Okay. So I'll work on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So next time we'll plan the lesson such that we keep it to maybe an hour and a half at the most. So this is close to 2 hours today. Okay. But that was a good session. I thought you did very well on the forcing moves. So just remember to do the same thing when you solve your puzzles this week.
Right. I think the challenge is to be disciplined and consider all the moves, even if they look kind of stupid at the first glance. I think that is the hard part. So
eventually the speed at which you do this will improve, so that you don't think you're wasting time checking these forcing moves. So once you speed up, it's going to be really quick to check the few checks in the position.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Good session. All right. See you later, and see you later, Neil, Shivam, and everybody in chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Okay.
Bye-bye.